Good evening, folks. It's another episode of the ARCA Racing Podcast here with your host, Starting Park Car, aka Colby Evans. I am happy to be back. It's been a long week. We've had some amazing racing. We had a crazy weekend at Talladega with some ups, a lot of downs, but an overall wacky weekend, which, of course, as a racing fan, it's what you want. The weird parts, the bad parts, the fun parts, and the cool parts. It all makes a fun weekend. We had two ARCA races. We had the main series, of course, at Talladega, and we had the West Division over at Kern County. Both races were very good. We're going to go over all of that. Of course, we got the Dover East race this week, and we're going to be going over that too. We also got some other storylines that happened during the week, and some that literally just happened today that we're going to be going over. Whole lot of stuff on the ARCA Racing Podcast today, so join me if you will. Like and subscribe, of course. Follow me and my friends on social media, myself at Starting Park on Twitter, ARCA Racing at ARC_racing. The man himself, guy I love so much, Brad Smith, ad driver Brad Smith. The NASCAR badass himself, Brock Beard at NASCAR on Brock. And the NASCAR, the best NASCAR history guy, Nascarman _RR. Follow all of them. Those are my friends. They're, scared. I burped right at the beginning. What a botch. But those are all my friends. Give them a follow. They help me get this channel going. They help me keep going because they're just good people. But anyway, guys, let's get right into it. So we had Talladega, and I was really excited about this race because we only had 29 cars for last year's race, but yet it was still an amazing race. I really thought by ARCA standards, we've seen that, the composite bodies haven't really given us great racing, amazing overall racing, but yet it put on a halfway and pretty good show. So I was really optimistic coming into this race weekend, especially when we found out that we would have 34 cars on the entry list. Sadly, coming into the weekend, however, we would learn that one car had withdrawn from the event. The 63 of Dave Mader, unfortunately, withdrew from the event, the Spraker Racing team. It was not due to a team issue. Apparently, it was due to a personal issue. Was non-disclosed, so that's all I'm going to say about that. Sucks because I do think that Dave, even though he ARCA braked people at Daytona, he was very competitive. Definitely good to see. Would have been good to see him there, but supposedly that team will be back for next season. So Dave's not done yet. Just unfortunately, looks like a personal matter had to be taken care of for Dave Mader. With them not being able to show up to Talladega. So that still left us with a very solid 33 cars, which again, by ARCA standards for Talladega was a very, very solid field. I kind of predicted maybe 1 to 2 starting parks in this race, and the only one that I really confirmed was the 0-1 of Tim Monroe, because Tim has pretty much done starting parks in almost every race he's done, whether it be in either division he's run in. Unfortunately, though, Tim's starting park would go out in quite weird fashion. We'll get to that in a second. ARCA was the only series, ironically enough, while the other two series, the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series, were holding qualifying. ARCA didn't have qualifying, but yet they had practice. Really didn't make much sense to me why they would have the group practice and not make that group qualifying. So, kind of confused by that, honestly. Only 32 of the 33 cars practiced. I wasn't really sure who didn't practice. You had your fast guys, you had your slow guys. We had about the top 28 that were separated by about 2.5 seconds, and then you had the guys who, they run, the lower league Ilmore motors, and then you got the guys who run the legacy motors, and the legacy motor cars, they can barely keep up. They're not really made to run those types of big tracks. They just run them anyway. Because you're seeing like Brad can barely push out 162, and he's giving it all he's got. It's not like Brad's lifting. It's just how it goes. So, yeah. It's not like Brad's lifting. It's not like Zachary Tinkle's lifting. It's all that motor can give out. It's going as fast as it can. So yeah, we had, unfortunately, though, during practice, we had a very scary crash. I'm not sure what group it was. Was it group 2 or 3? But it involved a lot of the Venturini cars. And coming down in the tri-oval, It looked like that she was either getting pushed and got loose or got hooked. Wasn't quite clear because there was only one camera shot of the crash, but Toni Breidinger got hit by her teammate. I don't know if she got hit. Again, the camera angle we saw, again, this was not televised. We only saw it on an amateur camera shot from Jamie Little's Twitter. You can probably find the video on YouTube. You can probably find the video on Twitter if you looked it up. But either she got hooked or she got loose. But either way, a vicious crash for Toni Breidinger in practice, which totaled the car. And rarely do you see a Venerini team going to a backup car. But unfortunately, that was the case for Toni Breidinger. But obviously, the Venerini guys, the best in the business when it comes to this series. So while most teams don't have a backup car 100% ready to go, I got to believe that these guys, the Venerini's backup car, had to be pretty close to, if not already ready to go. At least one. They had 3 or 4 cars there. So you have to have at least 1 to 2 ready to go backup cars. So that was kind of the scary scene of ARCA practice. But another reason why I wished that ARCA practice was actually qualifying is it really jumbled up the field, because they were just going to set ARCA by the 2021 owner points, which meant all the Toyotas would be at the start of the field. And we all know that the Gibbs KBM entry and the Venerini cars, those are going to be your cars to beat. If you want to throw in Rev in there, but, overall, Venerini and Gibbs, those are the hardest ones to beat. But we had guys like Willie Mullins, which also shout out to Willie Mullins. We had the man himself, Brad Perez, crew chiefing one of Willie's cars. So that was pretty cool. I didn't know that. Greg Van Alst was second. Drew Dollar was third. Daniel Dye was fourth. We'll get into Daniel Dye's situation a little later in the show. But Daniel Dye was fourth. And the man himself, Raja Karuth, was got in because sometimes, even if you have a really, really fast car, like, for instance, Corey Heim, one of the fastest, if not the fastest car in the field in terms of single car speed, but he was only 17th quickest. Large in part because he only got 3 laps in, but also because maybe his group wasn't all that good. So it was very interesting, but at the same time, it was a little disappointing because I wish this could have been the starting lineup. Would have been interesting to see how Willie and Greg Van Alst, 2 guys who have never started on the front row at a plate race, would have done. But instead, Drew Dollar got the pole. It was kind of funny that they actually held a photo op for Drew Dollar winning the pole, and everyone's like, it's like the easiest pole you could ever win. He did literally nothing. They went off by 2021 car owner points, and as we know, Ty Gibbs and that team won the championship. So therefore, Drew Dollar was on the pole, but it was like the easiest pole a person could ever win. So makes you wonder why they even did one, but obviously, for sponsor benefits and all that, you have to do it. And so it was just kind of funny, Drew Dollar winning a pole for doing nothing, absolutely nothing, the easiest pole you could ever get, which actually also left a lot of interesting cars starting up front. People like John Garrett making his debut starting 8th, Brad Smith starting 11th, Tim Monroe starting 10th, Tim Richmond starting 7th, D.L. Wilson starting 9th, and unfortunately leaving some other cars like Gus Dean, a Venerini entry, starting 22nd, Willie Mullins starting all the way back in 28th, and entries like Thad Moffitt in 25th, and Raja Karuth all the way down in 19th. So I kind of wish, like I said, we had qualifying because a lot of good cars were scattered all over the place. So we got the race started, and luckily it really didn't take much for the action to start. Unlike Daytona, the field, got spread out. It was going to happen. We all knew it was going to happen, but it wasn't all that bad. Once everyone kind of got up through the gears and the cars started to close back together after a lap or two, we got a good, probably about 25 car field in the main draft. And that's kind of what I predicted, that we had about, out of our 33 cars, we had about 25 that could actually keep up in the main draft. That was my prediction. And sure enough, it was about around there. But But it didn't take long for chaos to start. Just 4 laps in, we had the 0-1, like I mentioned earlier, of Tim Monroe. The only, in my opinion, planned start and park, because the 0-1 in the main division is usually the car that does start and park for Andy Hillenberg. It was unsponsored. We all know Tim's done start and parks in the past. So I just kind of put 2 and 2 together. He actually blew a tire. Going into turn 1. And Brad Smith, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I was a little nervous here. Brad Smith nearly yeeted right into him. Luckily, Brad went through the grass. And also, luckily, I never want to see Andy Hillenberg tear up a car. Luckily, Andy Hillenberg's car was fine. There might be a few bent pieces, but nothing that team can't fix. And obviously, due to the flat tire, Tim's race was over very early. So he was our first retiree, just 4 laps in. Not that I think his race would have lasted any longer. Unless it could have also been that sometimes they would have probably, the one other time I've seen is they run the whole race on one set of tires. I've seen that done before, but I'm not sure if that was the case in this situation. I'd have to get confirmation by a Fast Track crew member, and unfortunately I don't have that. So we went back to green here, literally went back to green 1 lap later. And unfortunately we had another caution, and my heart also sank for this one. Brian Caltrider, really good underdog story. He lost all of his equipment in a shop fire a couple years ago. Managed to regroup, got his car back, and is planning, as of now, a full 2022 season. Unfortunately, his car lost a motor. And, for all your history fans out there, Brian Caltrider was driving a Hendrick Motorsports chassis, Hendrick Motorsports -358. So, little cool information right there. We got actually ARCA driver John Garrett in the chat, so that's cool. He ran on one set of tires. So you see, I've seen that done before a lot. I think Brad probably did the same thing. A lot of these ARCA teams, General Tire brings a good tire. General Tire is a very reliable tire, and Brad has done that multiple times. So Tim maybe was going to run the whole race. We don't know for sure. But either way, the flat tire was going to end his day. But yeah, going back to Brian Caltrider, I felt bad for him. When he ran the whole race at Daytona, I was really happy. Start and parked Phoenix. And as of, like I said, he was planning a full season. Now, was it a complete engine failure? Was like an oil line cut loose, so he just retired it? I haven't checked Brian's Facebook. I am friends with him. So if he does post an update, I'll be gladly to post that update to my social media, because I want to give you guys an update on him. But either way, I hate it because, a guy like him, he doesn't have a lot of funding. If he does need a new motor, a guy like him, that might be his season, or at least for quite a few races. And that sucks, because I'd like to meet him at Kansas. I'd like to get an interview with him, all that fun stuff for you guys. So we tried again to get the race back to green, but coming to the line, the 0 of AJ Moyer, it was originally supposed to be Con Nicolopoulos, but he had a prior commitment, couldn't make it, so AJ Moyer was put in the 0. This was the Ford, the Bill Davis Racing chassis. It seemed like they had brake checked in front of him, or AJ wasn't looking. I'm not sure what happened, but either way, the 0 smashes into the rear of one of these cars, goes spinning into the infield, and we're only going about 65 miles per hour. And I'm like, what? Everyone's like, ARCA moment on social media. Social media had a fun joke with it. I felt bad for AJ, because I'm like, when you're on FS1, the ARCA Talladega race has a lot of eyes on it. And I'm like, oh, poor AJ. You have a lot of eyes on that. And that's the last thing you want to do on national television. And if I know Uncle Wayne, he won't be too happy with that either. Because I've worked with Wayne when somebody damaged one of his cars. He's not a real happy camper. I wish I could tell you guys the stories with Wayne. I could go a whole 10 hours just talking about stories with Wayne, but I don't know if he was a happy camper after that happened. I was hoping it wouldn't knock them out of the race, because the damage didn't look all that severe, and luckily it didn't. There were pictures posted after the race. The car was pretty damaged, but from what I was told by a Peterson Motorsports crew member, they're just going to need a new nose. So it's fixable, even by Peterson standards. It's fixable. I don't know if they're going to be at Kansas. They didn't confirm that. I hope they are, because I always love seeing Wayne at the track. But yeah, either way, I was a little sad about that because I hate seeing anything bad happen to Wayne. But they did get back out. About 5 laps later, they got back out on track and did finish the race. So after all that, finally on lap 18, we finally got back to green. It was at this point where throughout the race, we had seen the number 8 of Sean Corr. Poor Sean Corr, you know, going back to Daytona, they had the amazing story with the Bob Keselowski tribute, getting that great top 5 finish. And man, they come here and it's just crap. From the moment the green flag started, we were having issues with the 8 of Sean Corr. It's like the car just would not run correctly. And by lap 17, the car was retired. You know, there were so many issues with the car. They're out there just for the win. And they unfortunately retired the car very early, right as we were going back to green. But we went back to green. We had 21 laps of straight green flag racing, and it was pretty good, man. Like, they were jockeying for position. You know, Drew Dollar held the early lead. Corey Heim got past him. And to a lot of people's shock, the field brought it to Venturini, man. They did not let the Venturini cars walk away with this one or do the classic car slows down, other car pulls in trick. They really brought it to them. And I'm happy about that because, you know, it made me a little mad. There's the fact that nobody seemed to work together at Daytona to get past these guys. You know, nobody worked together. But yet here at Talladega, they did not let them keep that lead. They made sure to challenge them at every point. And I'll just say this, for all the hate that Drew Dollar has gotten, he actually was very good in this race. I don't think he made any stupid moves, not that I remember. I think Drew Dollar actually probably ran one of his best races I've ever seen him run. And that's really coming from someone who's not high on Drew Dollar and thinks that he probably should have a little bit more practice. By this point, though, Drew Dollar had reclaimed the lead going back to green. Corey Heim, though, once took it again, but just for a couple laps as Drew Dollar would then hang on to it coming from lap 26, and Drew would hold the lead coming all the way to the competition yellow at lap 39. With just a couple laps to go in before the break would end, the field had kind of spread out, and I kind of knew it was going to happen. Everyone's like, oh, here comes the boring choo-choo train. I'm like, guys, we're 5 laps to go. I'm trying to explain to everyone, we're 5 laps to go to the end of until the competition caution. Why would we race hard? It makes no sense. So they just kind of puttered around until the competition caution happened. Competition caution happens, you know, everyone gets their tires. I believe they had 2 sets of tires in the pits for the teams who had tires to change. Obviously filled up with fuel. You know, these gas tanks, they don't need a lot of fuel. ARCA's got a bigger gas tank than the Cup cars, I believe. Or if that's changed by now, I'm not sure. I always remember that the ARCA cars used to have a bigger gas tank. But either way, we got back out. Lap 45 is when the race started. By this point, we did have another person in the garage, the 57 of Brian Dowsett, which is kind of sad because I'm a huge fan of the FDNY racing truck team. And, you know, Brian's an independent. He does it a lot by himself. And I want to see a guy like him be successful. So it was a shame to see him go to the garage. So we went back to green with Drew Dollar leading. And then we had the moment of the race. Not the end of the race, but we had the moment of the race. Coming off of turn 4 on lap 49 or 48-49, depending on who you want to believe, the 25 of Tony Breidinger and the 10 of Richard Garvey got together, and it just created this just chaos crash with the 03 of Braylon Lester, and probably one of the coolest. I love Andy. I feel bad for him, but arguably one of the coolest camera shots I have ever seen in my life. The 10 halfway almost onto its side, and yet it never hits the ground. An amazing shot. An amazing shot. That camera guy deserves a raise. what a shot that was. But like, I've never seen a car do that in my life. And for the new fans of racing, it's been like that for a long time. But what a shot that was. Richard Garvey slams into the 0-3, goes for right through the air. The 27 of Tim Richmond goes sliding. The 7 of Eric Caudell goes sliding. Tony Breidinger again involved in another crash. That's 2 cars for the weekend for her. And then the scary moment of the crash, Scott Melton. I saw a lot of jokes about this. And, to me, the joke can be used at some points, and then there's a time for no jokes. Scott Melton at full song, probably barely let off the gas. Thankfully, was not driver's side door, T-bones Eric Caudell, and it was just a very scary hit, very, very scary. And then I just saw immediately in replays people making fun of ARCA brakes. I'm like, guys, shut up. Okay, a guy could be seriously hurt here. I know both Eric and Scott Melton are up there in age. So my immediate concern was for them. Not the time for ARCA brake jokes, guys. We've seen that before, but this was not the right time. It was really touch and go there for a while. I'm looking at Eric's car and I'm looking at Scott's car and I'm like, guys, please get out. Because I know they're both on the older side. I've met both of them. They're very nice guys. Thankfully, we saw Eric get out of his car slowly. Was happy to find out that he was checked and released. Posted an update on social media. The car's junked, but you know what? Eric's fine. And that's what matters. Unfortunately, we later saw that they had to cut the roof off the 69 car of Scott Melton, and he had to be lifted out. Thankfully, though, I believe he did lower his window net, but he did have a compound fracture in one of his legs. I don't remember which one it was, but he simply just couldn't get out of the car. So the only way to get him out safely is they had to cut the roof off. Scott gave a thumbs up going into the ambulance. So Scott, he's gonna need some surgery, I believe, but he's okay. That's what matters. The car that one can't be replaced. That one's junked. But more importantly, both Eric Caudell and Scott Melton, the 2 guys that were the worst involved in this crash, are thankfully okay and safe, and that's just what matters. If you guys actually want to see the remnants of the car, the Kimmel Racing Facebook page, strongly you check them out. Will Kimmel is one of the best in the business. They have an in-depth video of the damage. Highly recommend you guys check that out. Highly, highly recommend it. Just a very scary incident overall. I hated seeing the jokes. A lot of people were like, oh, Scott Melton should have his license taken away. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about, okay? You're just a fan on social media. You have no right to say that, okay? I have had my opinions on Scott Melton too. But at the end of the day, he's in that race car. We're on social media. That's 2 different things, okay? And, I looked at the replays, the reaction time. He didn't have a lot of reaction time. Okay, people blame it on his age. Fine, you go out there. If people that I hated arguing with this, these like 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds arguing about this, fine. You get in that car with that kind of reaction time, and you miss that crash. It's not easy. So that really bothered me going back and forth with people about this crap. Like, guys, you have no idea what you're talking about. Half the time, I have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's not like. Yeah, it's like these people think that, just because you'd be younger, you can avoid that crash. Trust me, he was next to the 25 car. There was really no way for Scott, nowhere to go. There was smoke everywhere. It's like, God, people lighten up. It was just really frustrating for me, man. Really frustrating. I'm just glad everyone's okay. Scott's going to need some leg work done, but he's going to be okay. As for Caudell Racing's season, they do have more cars. In fact, Eric actually does plan on running the Dover race. We'll get to more of that when we get to our Dover preview video. But thankfully, he will continue to race. As for the Kimmels, as we've seen, Scott Melton has really been doing more of the racing for the Kimmel team. I'm not sure how this is going to affect their season. I know Kimmel will be at the dirt races, but as for now, that might be it for their season. I really hate that because, as a longtime ARCA fan, the Kimmels are a team that I've always been cheering for. So, as for the other people involved in the crash, of course, Tony Breidinger, Braylon Laster, Richard Garvey, Ryan Huff, Tim Richmond, all of those guys and gals, just again, a very scary crash. But, it's kind of what ARCA has been known for. The ARCA just seems to have these wild crashes that you would never see in the truck, Xfinity, or Cup Series. It's kind of amazing in some ways. But either way, it wiped out a lot of cars. I really hated that it ended Tim Richmond's day because, man, just like Daytona, they had a bad fast car. And I'm glad there's no damage. From what I was told by some friends who work with the team, the car is hardly, if damaged at all. I think they said it was actually a mechanical failure that knocked him out. But either way, Tim Richmond and Richmond Racing will be back on the plate tracks next year, forced to be reckoned with. But they're not done yet. They are still running some races this season on the ovals. I believe their next one is Iowa. So anyway, got back to green, lap 55. Unfortunately, though, that red flag took quite a bit of time. And as we know that this race was scheduled close to the Xfinity race. So there started to become the idea of, are we going to run into some time issues? But then I'm like, wait, the Xfinity race still doesn't start for another 2 hours. We should have plenty of time. But then people are also trying to tell me, what about the preview show? I'm like, we're going to stop a race for a preview show? What? So we got back to green on lap 55, ran 4 laps, and then had a debris caution. And then after that caution, it was then announced that whether it was the checkered flag or the caution flag would be the stop of the race. And I'm like, what? I have seen races get stopped due to time constraints. We've seen that before. But everyone's like, the Xfinity race is starting soon. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not starting for another hour. But apparently, I guess it's just how it works. Remember, the Xfinity race was on Fox. But, man, that really bothered me. I'm like, what? That is so not fair to ARCA. This race has been great. But nonetheless, the call was made over the radio, and we made it 5 more laps. Raja Karuth was leading just before that caution came out. Corey Heim had taken the lead. They went back to green, and utter chaos proceeded to ensue between people. Utter chaos was about to ensue with the leaders, and they raced like a bunch of knuckleheads, with all due respect. Brett Holmes was getting up there. Nick Sanchez was throwing blocks. Daniel Dye was throwing blocks. Everyone was racing so stupidly. And then I believe it was it the 43 that got turned? I think it was the 43 of Daniel Dye that got turned. And Nick Sanchez somehow got out front just barely of Brett Holmes and Corey Heim. And then there was the caution, and that was it. There was some confusion, though, as to who would win. Would it be the 20 of Corey Heim, or would it be the 2 of Nick Sanchez? It was later announced about a minute later that Nick Sanchez had won. And while I was happy for Rev Racing, I was also pissed. I understand TV contracts, TV time constraints, you can't help that. But at the end of the day, that's then on NASCAR for not scheduling this race an hour sooner. And I'm not hesitate to call that out. I was mad. This was a great race, probably one of the best ARCA plate races that we had seen in well over 4 or 5 years. I was highly entertained. I felt so bad for the series. That is not what we needed for this series. Again, I was happy for Rev Racing, though. I like Rev Racing. I like Nick Sanchez. He's my underdog pick for the championship. But at the end of the day, I wish it would have gone green to the end. It was 9 laps. What's another 9 laps? Seriously. Oh, I could go on all day about that. Either way, the race ended. Nick Sanchez was your winner. Brett Holmes was listed in second. Corey Heim was third. Thad Moffitt came out of nowhere in the Jeff McClure Racing entry to finish fourth. Gus Dean was fifth. Raja Karuth was sixth. Drew Dollar was seventh. Ryan Huff with a really solid top 10 finish in eighth. Parker Chase in ninth. And Max Gutierrez in 10th. Yeah, so I was highly disappointed at the finish. I actually, with all due respect, I do praise Corey Heim for calling out that finish. It had every right to kind of be called out, saying like it's kind of a stupid call to end it, especially considering how far over the Xfinity race went. I think that race went 10 extra laps. So, like most fans, I felt bad for the series. It was a great race. I don't want to let that finish overshadow it. Very, very entertaining race. ARCA officials should be very proud of the race that they put on. And I'm excited to see where they take this series into 2023. We've really got a good program going with the ARCA series. Of course, the one thing I could always wish to go up would be the payouts, but, that's just not going to happen, unfortunately. But either way, some other fun results. The Peterson entry of Zachary Tinkle got a top 20. The man himself, Brad Smith, got 22nd. So some good runs for my underdog friends, and I always love to see that. And an overall, a very good race. The point standings following Talladega, arguably you could say the most popular driver in the ARCA series, the man himself, Raja Karuth, leads the points right now, 1 point over Daniel Dye. But we do have some news about Daniel Dye. Oh, yeah, John Garrett. We can't forget John Garrett in the chat. P21. Not forgetting about you, buddy. But we do have some news about second place in points, Daniel Dye. Apparently, he was arrested yesterday. I'm like, what? Apparently, there was an altercation at his school? A physical altercation where it involved the head and the special area. I don't want to get it. Describe the area, but let's just say something got kicked and something ruptured. And first off, ouch. I hope that person's okay. But either way, a very sucky situation for Daniel Dye, and has now been indefinitely suspended by NASCAR and the ARCA Racing Series. Both Bob Pockrass and GMS Racing have put out statements based off of what's happening with Daniel Dye. The situation, I feel bad for the kid. He's very young. He's got a lot of talent. But yeah, that's kind of it right now. This just happened yesterday, so not a lot of the details of what's going to happen to him are not in fruition right now. As we know, he's been suspended. The future of the 43 team right now is unclear. We could maybe see a truck driver. We could maybe see Grant Enfinger get in there. I think that'd be a good combination. Jack Wood, he could always use some extra seat time. But either way, a bad situation for the Daniel Dye and the Daniel Dye family and whoever that person was who got kicked. That's all I'm going to say about the situation because, again, it's a personal situation. We also had another situation with a couple of other drivers. I don't want to get into that because I've already spoken with the other two. You guys know who they are. You know who they are, but I'm not going to get into it because they're two friends of mine, and the last thing I want to do is bring up their business. We've already discussed that. Either way, not the best look for ARCA this week. And it makes me sad because we had such a good race on Saturday. And to have, the situation with the time constraints, the situation with Dye and the other two, it just sucks, man, because it's the type of publicity I don't want for this series. I want this series to be out there, just not in that way. Not in that way. Like, why? So that sucked. But yeah, as for Daniel Dye, we still have a lot of time before Kansas. It's not like Kansas is this weekend. This weekend is an East race. Daniel Dye's not participating in that. So it is possible that a lot of this could be resolved within the next couple weeks. It also could not be resolved in a couple months. We don't know how long this is going to take. But Daniel Dye might not be out for the whole season. He might be out for the whole season. Again, we only know a couple of details. So apparently I will read a couple of things excerpt by Bob Pockrass. This is, and I quote from Bob Pockrass, ARCA driver Daniel Dye arrested Tuesday on felony assault charges of battery. States victim alleges Dye danced in front of him at school and then apparently Dye's groin near his face. And after he attempted to push Dye away, punched him in the groin. Ooh. Victim was then later diagnosed with possible ruptured testicular area. And of course, then more information about Dai's attorney and all that. Again, I don't really want to read all of it. If you guys want to, go to Bob Pogress's timeline or go to the GMS Racing timeline. It's all there. I don't want to read all of it because it'll take too much time. But either way, a really sucky situation for GMS. And I hope that I don't want them to see him shut down the team, because the last thing that ARCA needs is to lose a very competitive car. I don't want to see that. That would be really bad for this series. And in all honesty, I really hope that that maybe they put Jack Wood in that car, because we've seen how Jack Wood is done in the truck series. He could use a little bit more seat time. So hopefully they take advantage maybe of this opportunity and put Jack Wood in that seat, to get him some more intermediate experience. Either way, a sucky situation overall. And yeah, that was kind of Talladega, man. Talladega brings chaos as always. We love Talladega, and I can't wait for this series to come back there next year. That wasn't the only race also to happen on Saturday. We're now going to transfer into our ARCA West review at Kern County. Just need a little drink. Ugh. So yeah, the point standings. Before we start with the West Series, we'll get into the point standings. Raja Caruth leads. Daniel Dye's in second, but I guess you can kind of take him out now. Nick Sanchez is third. Parker Chase is fourth, but again, he's not full-time. Corey Heim is fifth, but again, he's also not full-time. Tody Breidinger is sixth. The next full-time driver is Amber Balkin in eighth. The next full-time driver attempting is D.L. Wilson in 11th. And then the next full-time driver, I believe, is Brad Smith down in 19th. Again, guys, we're a couple of races into the season. We won't really know the point standings until about halfway through the season, because we have a lot of part-time drivers starting this season. Starting the season off before they kind of fade away mid-season. All right, so thanks for tuning into the Talladega part. Now we have the West Series at Kern County. The first visit to Kern County since 2020. They were not there in 2021. The payout, not the payout, but the car count, meant to say. We did have 20 cars on our initial car count. Unfortunately, 2 cars withdrew from the event. The 86 of the Tim Spurgeon entry never actually had a driver listed. It just never showed up. And then the 66 of the Red Racing Team, they actually posted a statement on their Facebook saying that they had intentions to run. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the parts ready to fix their car from the Phoenix crash and therefore had to withdraw. That still left us with 18 cars showing up. We also had a last-minute driver change. Nick Jonides took over the 11 car from Chris Loudon. So that was kind of there. We had the 12 of Kyle Keller finally showing up to the track after withdrawing from Irwindale, and unfortunately did not show much speed despite having an awesome-looking baby blue car. Always loved baby blue in a race car. So that left us with 18 cars, technically 17, because I knew Paul Pedroncelli wasn't going to run the whole race. So I kind of just count 17. Qualifying had quite a shocker. PJ Pedroncelli, my favorite underdog in the West Series, won the pole. Todd Souza in his 100th West start qualified second. And Landon Lewis, yes, the Landon Lewis who won that chaotic dirt race at DuQuoin last year, in his ARCA West debut for the Bruce Cook Racing Team, started third. And Amber Slagle started fifth. Very impressive runs by the Bruce Cook Racing Team. Whereas, the Sunrise Ford guys were 4th and 6th, and the Sunrise Ford affiliated team was 7th, with the Bill McNally guys down in 8th and 11th. And I just got to say right now, I am not really impressed by Austin Herzog, and I'm a little concerned for Bill McNally. What if they don't win a race this season? That's not going to look all that good when the Napa Auto Parts cars are not winning the Napa Auto Parts sponsored races. We also had some new starters in the field. Trip Gaylord was in the field, and yes, he is the son of former NASCAR driver Scott Excuse me, sorry. He is the son of former NASCAR driver Scott Gaylord, who you might remember drove for Jimmy Means Racing. Pretty self-explanatory race. 150 laps. We had the lap 75 break where teams could change tires, of course. Race started off quickly. Paul pulled off very early. Went the first 35 laps. PJ pulled out to an early lead. Landon Lewis wasn't really letting him get away. Kind of stayed with him, but PJ definitely showed that he had a good car. Car to beat, kind of. Lap 35, unfortunately, we had a debris caution. Quickly got back to green. Ooh, excuse me, guys. Sorry. PJ once again held the lead, but just before the lap 75 break, the 6 of Jake Drew had ran down Landon Lewis, passed him, and also ran down the 33 of PJ, and actually passed him with just 4 laps to go before the race had reached its halfway break. So we had the halfway break. By this point, we still had 17 of our 18 cars running. Coming back from the halfway break, however, the 42 of Landon Lewis was able to get by the number 6 of Jake Drew for the lead. Unfortunately, by this point, it had clear that the dominant car of PJ Pedroncelli was not there. Despite leading the first 71 laps, fell back to 5th. He was not as competitive. I also felt bad for Amber Slagle. She had dropped back well beyond to about 9th or 10th. And another guy I wasn't really impressed with was Sebastian Arias. He kind of dropped back to 14th after starting 10th. It was good to see Trip Gaylord and Andrew Tuttle out there, kind of doing their best. They weren't really in the way. Luckily, for being a short track, Kern County also has a lot of room in the turns for lap cars to get out of the way. That's something I can appreciate. 25 laps later into the run, despite the 6 closing in on 6 of Jake Drew closing in on Landon Lewis, we had our first caution of the day, the 54 of Joey East. The Nike Kluwer Motorsports team appeared to lose an engine, unfortunately. Got back to green there with 42 laps to go. Once again, the 42 of Landon Lewis pulled out to a decent-sized lead. We had 2 more retirees by the end of this race. We'll get to those in a second. By this point, it was just clear that neither of the Bill McNally cars were really all that competitive. The 99 of Cole Moore, I think he basically made it up there off of pure talent because that car was pretty beat up after the race. Tanner Reff had finally moved into the top 5. PJ and Todd Souza had fallen to the lower top 5 and 6th. Trevor Huddleston was kind of stuck in 7th the whole race. Sorry, guys, I've been having some nasal issues. Trevor Huddleston was stuck in 7th pretty much the whole race. So, yeah, a lot of our usual contenders in the West Circuit really were not having the best nights. And like I said, by then, Trip Gaylord, unfortunately, the 77 team had lost the brakes, so they retired with 27 laps to go. And actually, with just 4 laps to go, the 12 team of Kyle Keller had actually pulled off track 2, citing an ignition failure. So unfortunately, despite that team being full-time, it's been a very rough start to their West Series tenure. But I do think they do win for having a baby blue car. I always love seeing baby blue cars. I do want to give a shout out to Nick Jonades. The John Wood Racing team finished a solid 11th. They beat Burgess. They beat Sebastian Arias. Very good run for that team. 11th place. Don't believe that they changed tires either. So good run for the old guys. Always good to see the old guys having a good run. So yeah, Landon Lewis, despite Jake Drew closing in, couldn't quite get there. And Landon Lewis, the dirt ringer, leads the final 65 laps and cruises to his very first West Series victory. A feel-good moment as the Bruce Cook Racing team has had a really, really rough 2022 so far. So yeah, the dirt ringer gets it done on the short track. And arguably one of the funniest moments that I hate nobody saw it because it happened so late at night. Ron Hornaday comes up from behind and in classic Venerini style gives Landon Lewis a big old kiss. I'm like, oh, it was great to see Ron Hornaday. You don't see him much anymore, but we all love Ron Hornaday. I don't know who doesn't love Ron Hornaday. But feel good moment for sure. Entertaining races always. West Series always puts on a good show. Saturday for ARCA really put on 2 great races. And again, it makes me happy to be a fan of this sport and be able to cover it. Our point standings coming out of that race, we're going to pull them up for you guys. Give me one quick second. I still have the main series point standings up. So the West Series point standings coming out of that race, Jake Drew still leads by 5 points now over his teammate Tanner Reff in second. Cole Moore is third. PJ Pedroncelli is fourth. Austin Herzog is fifth. Todd Souza is sixth. Takuma Koga is seventh. Eighth is Joey East. Ninth is Sebastian Arias. And 10th is Bridget Burgess. The points gap is pretty far separated. 5 back to second, 6 back to third, 14 back to fourth, 15 back to fifth. Now, by ARCA West standards, that could change. You know, we did remember last year's finale, we went into there with 6 guys having a chance at the championship. I hope we see that again. So anyway, boy, that was a lot to cover, and we still got more for you guys. ARCA East. It's not ARCA Series. It's the ARCA East Division. They are back this weekend at Dover. This Friday, we will go over the entry list in a quick second. Just need one more sip. So yeah, so coming out of those 2 races, we got another ARCA race this weekend. Like I just said, guys, our ARCA East at Dover, 17 cars, not the biggest entry list. The last 2 years, we have had 18 and 18. This year we got 17. And one of the reasons I've never understood about this race, it pays very, very good. I've never understood that. This one random East race at Dover pays very good. Like, to give you an insight, guys, Dover 10th place pays $6,000. Talladega 4th place pays $6,000. Last place at Talladega paid $2,200. Last place in this Dover race, 17th, pays $3,250. For ARCA standards, that's great. Yeah, we have 17 cars in this race. Venturini has got not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 entries. Venturini will have 4 entries for this ARCA East race. The 15 of Connor Jones, the 20 of Jesse Love, the 25 of Jake Finch. Yes, Jake Finch, who recently drove in the race at Pensacola, and the 55 of Jonathan Schaefer. Excuse me. Andy Hillenberg will also be there with 4 cars. Tim Monroe in the 10, Ed Pompa in the 11, Tommy Vi Jr. in the 12, and the 01 of Stephanie Moyer. Brad Smith will also be there in the 48. Daniel Escoto will be there in the 60. Of course, Leland Honeyman and Taylor Gray. Of course, Sammy Smith in the 18. Christian Rose will be there in the 40. Max Gutierrez will be there in the 30. And then, of course, Raja Karuth will be there. I think the reason why Raja is there, obviously, because he is running the Xfinity race, and it's to get him some more seat time. Very smart decision. The 2-car of Nick Sanchez will not be there. But again, guys, the race pays very good. Last place is $3,250. 10th place is $6,000. You know, first place, $22,350. That's more than Daytona. Think about that. This East race at Dover pays more to win than Daytona with sponsor awards. That's amazing. It's weird. This random East race pays more than the biggest ARCA race of the season. It makes no sense. And I love it. Some other notable entries. We have the 22 of Eric Caudell. Obviously, this entry was filed before Eric's crash. From what I was told, Steve Austin is no longer with Caudell Racing, unfortunately. And Eric is running it himself. Although due to the crash that he sustained, I'm not sure if it is going to be Eric actually driving the car. Obviously, I would expect this to be a start and park. The 22 was also scheduled to be running at Nashville Nashville Fairgrounds with another driver. So I would expect this car to still go the whole season. Like I said, though, guys, I think it'll be definitely a good race. You got the 4 Venturini cars versus Gibbs versus Raja. You got a good group of cars right there to really cheer for and to really go after each other. The starting parks in the field, I would expect to be the 10 of Tim Monroe, the 12 of Tommy Vi Jr., and the 48 of Brad Smith. Those would be my guesses for starting parks because we've seen the 12 and the 10 be the primary starting parks. And Brad is actually running the whole West season. I believe he will also be at Nashville, mainly because of, the drivers who run full-time get a bonus at the end of the year, the owner point bonus. And I believe Brad is also going after that in the main circuit and the East circuit. But either way, it's going to be a lot of fun, guys. My pick to win this weekend's race is actually Jake Finch. I think Jake Finch is really going to shock some people. Second place, though, I actually have is Sammy Smith. And third place I have is Taylor Gray. That's my top 3 for this weekend. I think it's going to be a very, very highly contested race. Of course, it'll be this Friday on Flow Racing. If you don't have Flow Racing, of course, just follow me on there. I'll give you guys the live race updates. But in case you guys are wondering about the great payout, first is $22,350. Second is $11,800. And third is $8,850. Now remember, though, guys, the top 20 cars get a $200 bonus from Flow Racing. We only have 17 cars here. So everyone will get a $200 bonus. So that technically means last place pays $3,450. By Andy Hillenberg standards, Andy Hillenberg will make more money this weekend with his 4 cars than he would make in almost 5 in a single ARCA, 5 in the main ARCA division. Again, it makes no sense. And I mean, we saw last year 2 of Andy's cars got top 10s, so I hope that happens again. These ARCA East races at Dover tend to be usually pretty chaotic, and I think it'll be the same again. Obviously with Brad, never really being at Dover, I'm a little concerned. Dover's a very, very high-speed track. I just don't want Brad to do anything bad to the car. A little concerned about that, but nonetheless, I think Brad's just going to run a couple laps, get that payout, and get out. Same thing with the other 2 Andy Hillenberg entries. Either way, guys, I would strongly recommend this race. It's going to be a lot of fun. The Dover ARCA East race is always fun. Another thing that we actually are going to cover just really quick, I want to end with this. Apparently, we already talked about the one situation with Tony, but the other situation that we talked about with Tony Breidinger, she did release some information that probably was pretty interesting. That the Bush program that was supposedly sponsoring Melissa Field, Stephanie Moyer, Jennifer Jo Cobb, Amber Balkin, herself, Tony Breidinger, and Natalie Decker. Am I missing any of them? If I'm missing anyone, put it in the chat. But supposedly this was supposed to be sponsoring them. And from what Tony Breidinger said, this was nothing more than a publicity stunt. Wow. So that's kind of weird. I really kind of hate that for Stephanie because I was kind of hoping that Fast Track could really use some extra money. But I really hate that for Melissa, too, because she's struggling the modified circuit. Either way, kind of a raw deal overall, and I hope Tony didn't get in too much trouble. But either way, guys, not that I forgot to throw that in there, so I want to throw that in real quick. But either way, guys, a very wild weekend here at Dover. Like I said, all the action is going to be on Friday. Cheer for Raja, of course. Who doesn't love Raj? I don't know who couldn't love him. But Venturini is going to be tough to beat this weekend. We all know Taylor Gray is going to be tough to beat. And, of course, Kyle Busch Motorsports, Joe Gibbs, Sammy Smith. I think we're in for a good race. You got everything you need in ARCA. You got your stragglers. You got your mid-pack cars, and you got your competitive cars. That's why I love this series so much. So, yeah, guys, tune into this Friday. Great payouts all around. I'm excited to announce, yes, Kansas is coming up. I will be there with Brad Smith. We maybe try to get some interviews. I'm definitely going to try to get some chassis history for you guys. Can't wait for that to come up. I'm also excited to announce you guys, again, this can't happen without your support. We're up to 233 subs. Remember, guys, we are so close. 250 subscriber giveaway, my first giveaway. We're going to be doing it at 250, 500, and then the big 1,000. At 250, guys, remember, 3 164 scale diecasts from my personal collection, still mint on card, have not been opened, will be given away. So remember, guys, subscribe and give this video a like, because I cannot wait to announce it on one of these podcasts who's going to win those 3 diecasts. So remember that, guys. Again, I cannot thank you guys enough for your continued support of this channel. I hope you guys are enjoying the little old school racing clips I'm uploading. I found some old recordings of what I had back in the day of a lot of low budget stuff. Lot more to come. Lot more to come. So I hope you guys are all enjoying that. And again, keep cheering ARCA. Keep supporting the series any way you can. The Reese's Sweet Move of the race, vote for that, because the Reese's prize packs that they give away at the end of the year are so worth it. And once again, guys, I thank you so much for joining me on another fun episode of the ARCA Racing Podcast. The Talladega review, the Kern County review, all the wacky news and notes, the Dover preview. So much fun on today's episode, and it's all thanks to you guys. You guys are the best. You guys make this happen. I just sit here and talk. But anyway, guys, you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday night. Again, like, subscribe, remember the giveaway, and check out my other videos. Follow me on social media. I love you all. Good night.